And so now finally, let's talk about our master channel. And on the master channel, in this particular project, I have a parametric EQ. I have an EQ just cutting off any of the super low frequencies before it hits our maximus, which is our mastering compressor. And then we have a fruity limiter, which just catches any of the peaks. And then I have some metering plugins just to see where I'm sitting in the mix and what my dynamic range is. Let's talk a little bit about this signal chain on the master. So the Maximus compressor is a multiband compressor, and it just has a lot of control over your sound. And all of these controls are very similar to what we already discussed in the compressor itself, except in Maximus, instead of setting the threshold, we're actually adjusting how much signal we're sending into the compressor. And then the gain is controlled with this post knob here, with this post control on each frequency. So we have low, high, mid, and high. And we use it to glue everything together and to make everything sound a little bit more fuller and a little bit more cohesive. So if I set this to the default values that it loaded with, you see how much bigger the track sounds when I enable this compressor. So I'm just going to set this to the default values, and then I'm going to go over as to how I actually set Maximus up. So each frequency, it has its own compressor on it, and then we have this master, which is another additional compressor. And because the bass is one of the hardest things to control in our mix, a lot of times I choose to compress the bass quite heavily and then turn it down a little bit. So let's just do that. And this tension control adjusts how much input we're driving into the compressor. And so if we set this to be a positive curve, we're compressing. If we set this to be a negative curve, it actually works as an expander. So this essentially is like a knee and input and output ratio control. And so I will also drive even more low end into my compressor by using this pre-control, and it's basically like a threshold control. And then once I've really heavily compressed this bass, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. So let's compare before and after. And then we're going to do the same for the mid frequencies. So we're just catching all these transients and we're compressing them, bringing them down a little bit. And also we can adjust this attack to be a little bit slower. That way we still have plenty of punch in the drums. And then let's do a little bit in the high frequencies as well. Adjust the knee. So this is before. So you can already hear how much we've sort of brought the sound up and made it a little more cohesive. And we don't want to apply too extreme a settings here. A little bit goes a long way. And then we have this final compressor on the master. And even that's a little bit too much, I would say. So these three frequency bands, these three separate compressors that we have, are also controlled. So you can also control the mix between how much you're sending of this into the master. You can adjust this by this LMH mix here. So this is essentially like a parallel compression setup here. So you can control between the original signal and the compressed signal. And the reason you use this is because the original signal has a lot of transients. And what we've done with each frequency band is we went along and we adjusted these peaks to be down and a little bit more controlled. Sometimes you want to bring these transients back a little bit into your mix. And so you would use this LMH mix control to bring some of that original sound back. Again, let's A-B. So again, applying a little bit of gentle compression at each stage, and then on the master, just a little bit is going to bring our track together and bring all of these mixer channels together into a sort of cohesive sound. And then another thing that we can do is we can control the width of each frequency band. So on the low end, we might want to mix this down to the center, so it has more power. And when we mix our bass down to a single channel, it's not disturbing the mid and high frequencies that are separated in the left and right channel. And then the mid we can widen a little bit if we choose to. Same with the highs. And what I like to do is I like to adjust it to an extreme setting and then bring it back a little bit just to hear the difference. And because we have the stereo bus set up and we have all this width that we added in with the delay trick that I showed you, now when we control this width control on this Maximus, we're able to actually adjust quite a bit of width and add or reduce the width on this high frequency band. So now that we've set up our Maximus, now we need to make sure that we don't have any more overs, and that's why I set up this fruity limiter here. And all I'm using this limiter for is to catch these few little overs that we have, because I set the ceiling up to be -1 dB. And anything that gets close to this -1 will just get reduced back down. And that way we don't have anything that jumps over -1 dB.